Ankita.
Hello everyone.
Hi, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Hello ma'am. There is a lot of
Hello, ma'am.
no.
Good afternoon.
I request
Good afternoon, ma'am.
everyone to please put your microphones on mute. All of you, please put your microphones on mute. Thank you. Hello. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Yes, ma'am. It is audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
great.
It's
Okay, great. So we are starting this webinar, which is an international webinar on communicative approach to English language teaching. And once again, before we start this, I request all of you to please put your microphones on silent because I'm listening to a lot of noises and it is very difficult for me to speak. Still, some
Okay, ma'am.
microphones are not on mute. I request everyone to please put your microphones on mute. Okay, so as you know that this webinar is on communicative approach to English language teaching. It's a very wide and very broad area to explore in 1 hour, but we have handpicked two important aspects of this communicative approach. The first one is about the talking time of teacher, and the second one is how to use authentic materials to create communicative classroom. And as you can see, there are two speakers for the day. The first one is myself, Dr. Ankita Khanna, and the second speaker is Dr. Justin James. He is a very renowned personality in the area of teacher training, and he is also leading the English Language Center. So I welcome all of you and I welcome Dr. Justin James. Okay, so let us have a brief understanding of what exactly is communicative language teaching. Communicative language teaching came into existence somewhere near 1960s, and it was a kind of reaction to the older approaches to language teaching that includes grammar translation method and bilingual ways of teaching language to the learners. Now there are three things that makes communicative approach to language learning different from the other approaches. Initially what we used to do was that uh, there was a classroom, there was a teacher, and teacher used to explain the rules of grammar to the students. The students needed to memorize the rules of the grammar and then used to do those application based things in some exercises or the things activities given to the students. Now there in this approach the shift is completely from learning the language to using the language. Now our focus is no more that the students should learn English language. The focus is that students should be able to use English language. So this is a big shift. The second one, all of us who are in the area of teaching and also the aspiring teachers, the research scholars, we all are aware of one word called student centered class or student centered teaching. Almost, it has almost become a cliche now. Everyone is talking about the class should be student centered and not teacher centered. Now, when we talk about communicative approach, there is a little more shift. Now, the shift is from student centered class to student led class. Now, do you see the difference? When when the class is student center, it means that student is in the center of the class and all the activities related to the learning are designed around the interest of the student. But when it is a student led class, it specifically means that the teachers take a back seat and the class is led by the students. Now, how do we do that? I'm sure many of you will have the questions that if students start leading the class, what is our role in the class? Right? So let us have a look at a few more slides. The third one is the shift was from grammatical structures to meaningful communication, right? What we used to do earlier was a lot of focus was done, or a lot of focus was given on being grammatically correct. Not that being grammatically correct is now required nowadays, it is equally important, but then does that grammatically correct structures lead to meaningful communication? That is the more important thing. Now, as you can see on your screens, there are three kind of questions that you often see in language learning classes. Are you all able to see this on your screen? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, great, great.
Yes, madam.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
great, great. Thank you.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
so you can see that there are three kind of questions that you generally see in English language learning classrooms. The first one is practicing question forms dash a learner perfect. Okay. The second one is on the weekend, I am going to dash in the morning. I am going to dash in the afternoon, but I am not going to dash at all. And the third kind of question is ask your classmate about three things she considers when selecting a movie. Now, if you minutely observe that there is a difference in the pattern of these questions, and there are three options given in front of each question you can see. Now, just take a second and try to match these options with the questions, just for your understanding. I request all of you to please mute your microphones. Don't be tempted to put them on. It is creating a lot of disturbance to me. Okay, so by now you must have figured out something. Let us have a look. Practicing question forms makes a learner perfect. This is a very mechanical question. In fact, this may test the learner's ability to understand the present tense, but then it does no good to the learner because such questions or such statements are generally not used in the real life. The learning is not real. The second one, on the weekend, I'm going to market in the morning, I'm going to temple in the afternoon, but I'm not going to gym at all. Now, this kind of question, if you see, it is contextual. There is a context to it. So at least it is meaningful communication. See, language always happens in a context. There has to be a context to what you are speaking. It is embedded in our culture. So unless you give a context to the language, it is all superficial. And the third one, ask your classmate about three things he considers when selecting a movie. This is exactly the kind of approach we are looking at. Communicative practice. This gives a learner chance to talk freely, elaborate on his experiences, use all the language that he knows, which means actually bringing real life scenario into the classroom. And this is the entire aim of communicative approach. So in communicative approach, interaction is the key. Interaction is the key which leads both to the goal of the study and which is also the means of the study. Interaction takes you, it's a journey that takes you to the ultimate goal of using language, not learning language. And the ultimate goal of this kind of approach is communication competence. How much do you know language is one thing, and how much can you use language in real life situations, that is something else. Now, having said that, and since we are talking about the time teachers spend in the class while talking, let us have a quickly a look at the two kinds of subjects that we have. I have broadly categorized the domains into two kinds of things. The first one is the knowledge based domains, and the second one is skills based. So, generally, the domains like history, philosophy, literature, or maybe some engineering subjects, they fall under the category of knowledge based domains. Whereas there are some subjects like language, communication, they all are skills based subject. So also there is a study that says that the way knowledge based and skills based subjects should be dealt with in the classroom are different. You cannot deal with both these subjects in a similar way. For instance, if it is a class of philosophy and the lecturer is engaging the students in the, say, theory of Plato's allegory of caves, there are high chances that lecturer or the teacher will do a lot of talking. Though there may be some interaction, but largely it will be the teacher who will be speaking. But then, if the class is related to learning of a language, it is the learners who need to do more speaking and more talking. Hence, the shift is from the teacher to the learners. So, also, what kind of subject or what kind of class you are engaging with also depends on the approach that you might want to choose. Most of the times, we feel that teaching is equal to learning. And I'm sure many of us would here agree that teaching does not equate to learning, right? So if we teach, that does not mean that students have learned. What requires learning is a lot of energy, involvement, and participation from the students. And how can we achieve that? We can achieve that only and only when the students are given more opportunities in the classroom to speak, and the talking time of the teacher is restricted or limited. British Council has done a lot of work in this area, which is known as TTT, which means teachers talk time. How much do teachers talk in a language class, and how much do students, the learners who are actually supposed to talk in the class? This is a data from the Visible Learning Conference shared by John Hattie. He says that the number of questions asked by the teacher is 250 words per day per week, and number of questions asked by the students is 2 per class per week. So we can see that this data is shocking, and we can see that who is doing more talking and who is supposed to talk more. Even framing questions is an art. Are we training our students to frame questions properly? Forget about answering them. Now, since I've established some context on what teachers' talk time is, there might be a question in mind of many of my friends here, that why should we avoid TTT? What is wrong? Teachers are supposed to speak in the class. But then I think I have given some justification that why, especially in language classes, it is the students who should be speaking and not the teachers. Let us have a look. The number one reason why TTT should be avoided is that the communicative focus of the learner is lost. And the shift that we were talking about, the paradigm shift that happened from the grammar translation method to communicative approach, that shift is lost. And again, the class becomes from being student centric to teacher centric. So again, it doesn't solve the purpose, especially for the language classes. Number two reason why teachers should not speak a lot in the language classes is that the communicative approach, it focuses on ability to use the language, not ability to learn the language. So if teachers do a lot of talking, there is a possibility that students memorize the rules of grammar and become very good with, grammatical structures. But then are they getting real time opportunities in the class to practice using the language? Real time situations. Language doesn't happen in the classroom. We don't talk in the four walls of classroom every time. We have to go out and face the world. So are we preparing our students for that? So my next question is, why do teachers indulge in TTT when we all understand and it is established by now that teachers should reduce on their talking time? So what is it that tempts us to just talk and talk and talk in class? I'm sure many of you would agree to me on this. It's a very popular notion that if a teacher is not speaking, then nothing is happening in the class, right? Nothing is happening. She was just standing, students were doing something, and actually nothing was happening in the class. So again, my dear friends, this is a myth. It is not necessary for a teacher to speak, right, to enable her students to learn. There are so many other activities and there are so many other ways in which you can engage the students and actual learning will take place. And in the later part of the session, Professor Justin James will share some of these techniques with you. I understand that teachers have a lot of work to do managing work life balance and doing a lot of other things, but then let us accept that sometimes, if not most of the times, teachers are unprepared and at times even unorganized. So when you go to the class unprepared and you have no material with you, you have no material to distribute, to show, to display, to talk about, then what is the last choice that you are left with? You yourself will talk, right? So if you go to the class unprepared, so if you go to the class, hello, excuse me, there's a lot of disturbance here. Will someone please mute their mic? Okay, So most of the times teachers go unprepared for the class, and this also accounts to a lot of talking because they try to compensate for not being prepared. Okay, now number three, have a look here what I'm trying to say. This is scenario one. There is a student in the class. He is very happy because he has solved one of the questions that was given to him, and he says, I think this word acts as a verb in this sentence. Now the teacher, what does she reply? Verb. You think this is a verb? It's right. Very good. Students, please note that this word is a verb. Now, something that could have been communicated in a single sentence, the teacher took so many words and so many sentences to articulate that thing, right? So just contemplate, just think about your classroom scenarios and just think whether you do this or not. Scenario number two, there is a classroom, there is a teacher, there are students, and the teacher wants the students to do some exercise. So what is her way of giving instructions to the students? Students, please look here. Okay, now what you are supposed to do is that read this story carefully and try to attempt the exercise or fill in the blanks given at the end, which could simply be read the story and fill in the given blanks. Signposting. This technique is called signposting. You don't have to speak everything. Just look at the students, open your book, page number, and complete the blanks. That is it. You don't have to give such elaborate instructions because most of the times we feel that elaborate instructions lead to clarity, but on the other hand, they lead to confusion. Now, the scenario one that we just saw is a flaw in the English language teaching, which is known as echoing, and the scenario two is known as repetition. The fourth reason why teachers tend to talk a lot in the class is they try to build rapport with the student, and the second one, demonstration of their knowledge. So, my dear friends, we all will agree to this that you can build rapport with the students, but you don't have to talk a lot for that. Just being there, just being good with what you do, being available for the students even outside the classroom, and just giving your best in the classroom. That is all you need to be a good teacher. You don't have to talk in the classroom and rob the students of the precious learning opportunity that otherwise they deserve. And also demonstration of their knowledge. We all are teachers, so it goes without saying that we are experts in our field, we know a lot, but then instead of always trying to demonstrate our knowledge in the class, it would be better if we try to understand what is the level of the students and ask them to speak more rather than we telling how much we know. Okay, now so we come to the most important question: what can be done to reduce TTT? How can we actually work on ourselves so that we don't talk a lot in the class? Number one is meticulously planned instructions. And I am not talking about meticulously planned lesson plans. It might sound a little overboard, but you may want to practice your instructions before you go to the class. When I will give this exercise to the students, what exactly my instructions would be? When I will ask the students to go for this kind of group work, what exactly my instructions would be? So not only the lesson planning and sequence of the activities and outcomes and objectives, you also need to plan your instructions. Using gestures, prompts, signals, as I just demonstrated, one very popular technique is signposting. Other one is there are some very popular English language classroom techniques that you can learn, and maybe in the first 2 or 3 classes your students will not understand, but eventually when you do it every day they will also get a hang of it and start responding to your hand gestures. For example, this and this. So students easily know that this group has to speak, this group, you don't have to speak every time. Okay, now group A, please stand up and tell what are your findings. No, you don't have to say that. You just have to do this with your gestures. Similarly, you can design, there are some standard gestures for English language teaching classes, and some gestures you can design according to the repo of your students with you. Now, the next thing is pair work. Pair work, as you all can understand from the word, is dividing students into pairs so that they can work on an activity or a problem collectively. So when students are involved in pair work, again it gives them real life experiences, and also it encourages a lot of language usage. When two people talk, a lot of language uses is involved. Eliciting responses. Hello, Sudeshna, can you hear me? Hello. Okay, so please keep your microphones on mute, don't put them on. The next one is eliciting responses. Uh, Friends, do we really believe that all the students who come to the class are clean slates? And I'm sure many of you will say no. No, they are not clean slates. They have their understanding, they have their exposure, they know something about the language, they know something about the world. So the people that we are dealing with in the classroom are not clean slates. They are people with experiences and exposure. So eliciting responses basically is making use of the experiences and exposure of the students. So if you write a question on the board and instead of teacher giving the answer, it would be so much better if we elicit the responses from the students. Okay. And the next one is accepting silence, right? So we as teachers are extremely uncomfortable with silence in the classroom, right? We keep on telling children, we keep on telling students, keep quiet, remain silent, but then we actually don't want silence, right? There should be someone who is talking, either the teacher or the student. But in language classes, sometimes you just, everyone needs to be silent, just brainstorming, thinking, analyzing, or maybe just absorbing everything that you have just listened to. So silence is not a bad thing in a language class. At times, in fact, at times silence may help students or learners absorb the language in a better manner. So my dear friends, if the classroom doesn't look very perfect, organized, and if the teacher is not immediately obvious when you peep in the classroom, and if that teacher appears to be a learner as well as a mentor, both in the group of students, there is an extremely high probability that effective, deeper, and better learning is taking place. So with this, I think I'll hand over the presentation to Dr. Justin James, and he has a lot of contribute in the relation to what I have spoken just now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. If you have any questions,
Thank you.
we'll take that in the end.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon to all. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir. We are hearing.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you very much. At the outset, I thank the university for inviting me to present here. I also thank Dr. Ankita for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk to you today.
Sir, voice is not audible. You are muted, I think.
Is it okay now?
Your voice was not audible.
Yes.
Now it's
Now,
Yeah, now it's audible.
okay. So let me start. At the outset, I thank the university and Dr. Ankita for inviting me for this presentation. Good afternoon to all. And basically, we plan this presentation for the school teachers MPhil scholars and PhD scholars who are aspiring to become teachers. Now I see a lot of senior professors attending this. Thank you for joining us. The topic of my presentation is how to create a communicative classroom using authentic materials. This presentation will be a kind of complementary one, running along with the theory you just heard from Dr. Ankita. She discussed at length how to reduce the teacher's talk time and enhance students' talk time in a class. I'm going to demonstrate how this can be achieved. I'm not going to go back and forth between the theory and the practice. I'm just going to discuss how this can be practically implemented in a classroom situation. As an introduction, why do we need to have a communicative classroom? Because a communicative classroom has a learning environment where students are given an opportunity to develop their communicative capabilities. When they learn a language, they have to be proficient in all the language skills. They should be able to listen, understand, listen and speak, then read and write. Unless they get enough exposure to each individual skills, they will not be able to be successful in utilizing that particular skill in their day-to-day life. Moreover, a communicative classroom is a learning situation where students get opportunities to express themselves without any inhibitions. What I mean by inhibition is that students in our situation, in our culture, they find it difficult to express themselves, partly because of the cultural condition, partly because of their lack of knowledge in that particular language, as well as lack of experience in using that language. So therefore, they continuously nourish a fear inside them that if they make a mistake, others may laugh at them or criticize them. By using a communicative classroom, what we can do is we can reduce this fear and motivate them to communicate without any inhibitions. Why a communicative classroom? What is the primary aim of learning any language? Basically, to communicate with people. In our context, we learn English for various purposes. One particular purpose is to communicate in English, either in our day-to-day life or in a job situation. Of late, English is learned for the purpose of getting a job in a multinational environment where our learners are expected to communicate very fluently and very effectively. Therefore, a language classroom should provide opportunities for our learners to develop their language skills essentially for communication. Once they learn this language, they should be able to go out and manage their day-to-day communication, either it is official or it in personal life. Now, how do we create such a communicative classroom? One method of creating a communicative classroom is to use authentic materials. We use a lot of textbooks, custom-made teaching or learning materials in our day-to-day teaching learning exercise. In addition to that, what we can do is we can use authentic materials in order to create a communicative classroom. What are authentic materials? Authentic materials are materials that are available in our society that are not custom made for educational purpose. The advantage of using such materials is that they can break the monotony of textbooks. With our experience, we can understand that mostly students are less interested in reading from the text. And when we teach text, mostly the communication becomes one way. The teacher talks all the time and the students listen. This becomes a very monotonous experience for the students or the learners. If we are able to relate learning to real life experience or real life requirement, the learning process will be more engaging, it can be more imaginative, and also it can be very motivating. Now let me give you some examples of authentic materials. Authentic materials are generally materials that are available, that we come across in our daily life, like newspapers, magazines, songs, TV programs, films, podcasts, even pictures, cartoons, and social media messages can be used in a learning environment because the messages or the information the students get are familiar to them. That way, they become interested in what we say in the class. It is easy to engage students using these kind of materials. Moreover, authentic materials can help us to elicit very good responses from the learners as these materials are related to their life experiences. It is also easy to find them. The only thing is how we customize these materials. One basic requirement for selecting right materials that can be used in the class is to use our own imagination as our teachers. There is no limitation, but there is something you have to be careful about is the cultural compatibility of the material we select. Why I insist on checking the cultural compatibility of the materials which we use is the purpose of using this materials in class is to create a communicative environment, not to create any chaos or discuss something that is against the cultural practices that are existing in our society. If we use that, there can be a lot of chaos and confusion, and our objectivity may be lost. Therefore, we should be very careful in selecting the materials. We should avoid materials that deal with the religious beliefs or criticize them. Extremely annoying political messages, these things we should avoid. This is to maintain a sort of objectivity and also to keep the students engaged without giving them an opportunity to have any negative impacts from the class. Now let me demonstrate how we can use authentic materials in class. What I am going to do is, I have selected a few pictures. I'm going to tell you how we can exploit these pictures in our classroom and engage our students and increase their communication capabilities. Let us do a first activity. This is a vocabulary building activity. Write down the words that come to your mind when you look at the picture. Now, how do you go about it in a classroom? If you have a smart board, you can display this picture on a smart board. or if you have a PPT facility, you can project it on the screen, or you can print this picture on a large chart. If all these things are not possible, what you can do is you can print these pictures. Give me a second. Yes. Visible? Yeah, it is. It'll come. Yeah, it's come. Yeah, you're able to see. Yeah, I'll repeat this from the activity 1. Okay, sorry about that. Activity 1, this is a vocabulary building exercise. In this, I am going to display a picture on the screen. What you can do is write down the words that come to your mind on the chat window. But how do you use this in the class? What you can do is, if you have a smart board, you can display this picture on the smart board. Can you see the picture? Can someone respond on the chat menu?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can hear
Yes,
me
sir.
clearly?
We can see the picture.
Yes, we can hear you, and simultaneously
thanks
the
a lot.
PPT also going on nicely.
Right. What you can do is, right, you can display this picture on a smart board, or use a projector and display it on a screen, or print it on a large chart paper, display it along with a board. If you don't have all these facilities, what you can do is print this on a A4 size paper and distribute it among students. Don't make too many copies, make 5 or 6 copies and distribute to the students. If students are seated in a group, each group can get one particular picture. And you can ask them to, you can do is, you can ask the students to say the words that come to their mind, and you can write those words on the board so that the vocabulary can write those words on the board. So can you hear me? Sorry, there is some disturbance. Okay,
Yes,
you will
sir.
get a list of words that are being shared by the students. Here, what is very important is that all students may not know words that are related to this picture. Some students may give you a few words. Some students may give different new words. Copy all of them onto the board. Finally, you get something like this, isn't it? When we add all the words that are being shared, we can have something like this on the board. Now, what can you do with these words? We can start explaining difficult words or ask some of the students the meaning of these words or how these words are related to the picture. Through this exercise, the students are able to come across new words. And if time permits, the teacher can use some of these words in sentences. So students get an opportunity to use or learn how to use these words in a sentence. You can ask also some of the students to write sentences. You can invite them to the board, ask them to write a sentence on a particular selected word. Either you can select a word or you can give the choice to the students. Thereby, you can allow more student autonomy in the class. Also, instead of giving the word meaning directly, what you can do is you can use them in a sentence and encourage students to guess the meaning from the context. This is also very important, where they get the meaning of the words from the context, where they can derive the meaning from the context. It will enhance their thinking abilities also. As a follow-up action, what we can do is we can ask students to maintain a vocabulary log. In that log, we can ask them to write the meaning of the word, the words, the meaning of the word, synonyms, and a sentence using the word. This can be a kind of homework. Maybe you can ask them to produce it once in a week and have a look at it. This will help them enhance their vocabulary. Once they use these words in a sentence and know the synonym, they will not forget this word. So vocabulary building is a basic exercise in language learning, because once they come across a word, it is important for them to know the words, the spelling of the word, the meaning of the word, the synonym of the word, and how this particular word can be used in a sentence or in his or her daily communication. If there arises a need to use that particular word. These words thus learned will be a kind of source, a kind of dictionary, a kind of word reserve that will be there in their brain for their use whenever there is an opportunity for using that particular word. Hope you got the idea of using a particular picture in order to enhance the vocabulary of students. Shall I move on to the next activity?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a main activity. The first one can be used as a warm-up, and a teacher has to make it a point that he gives some sort of vocabulary exercise every day in the class, at least for the 10 minutes. It can be a warmer in the class. If you do this in a semester or in an academic year, you just make a mathematical calculation. If each class they are learning 10 new words, what will be the number of words they'll be learning throughout the academic year? Excuse me. Then the second activity, using questions, how you can combine questioning and these authentic materials. I think Dr. Ankita discussed elaborately on how you can teach the students to make questions. And the importance of asking questions and allowing students to ask questions in the class. Now, how are we going to do this? Why are you going to do this? Questioning is an effective technique in making language classroom communicative. Basically, when you ask questions, they are under obligation to give you an answer. Even if there are some students who refuse to give answers, you can change the pattern of question, make it lighter, or ask another student to answer, and ask the student to repeat so that they learn to communicate in the class. Why authentic materials? Because they are very interesting and you can generate a lot of engaging questions using these materials. Now let us look at what the benefits of using questions. There are innumerable benefits when you use questioning technique. Questions generate interest and curiosity on the topic when you ask a question. A simple question, do you like this picture? Either a student's answer in affirmative or negative. It involves some sort of thinking. And also, when you present a picture like the one I presented for the vocabulary building exercise, it creates a curiosity also. The very nature of the picture, it's a very rare picture. I think you will all agree with me. It will create a curiosity in them to know more about it. Or either they will get some questions like, what will happen next? What will happen to the eagle? What will happen to the drone? So that way the curiosity is created there. Questions encourage thinking and brainstorming. When you ask a question, if you ask them, do you think the eagle mistook that drone for a prey? It involves some sort of thinking, isn't it? Also, they will be able to visualize the picture in their mind and think about it or think various aspects of the picture. Also, questions provide opportunities for discussion when you ask a question. One student can say that I like this picture. Another student say, I don't like this picture. If you ask, why do you like this picture? Or why you hate this picture? Or why you don't like this picture? Then it gives them opportunities to explain, thereby creating an opportunity of discussion. Questions keep learners engaged. So if you keep questioning, the students will become alert. Maybe they'll be thinking that next question may come to me, and they'll be alert in the class. Questions reveal gaps in understanding. Now at a higher level, for example, if you are asking a student to talk something about the impact of technology in nature or impact of technology on nature, there are some gaps. What is it to do with this picture? Whether it is a negative impact or a positive impact. This question will help them to analyze the situation further. Also, question build a foundation for enhancing knowledge. Now with this picture, they come across new words, new ideas. We can ask them to think about the impact of technology on nature. That will help them to increase their knowledge. Maybe they will go and Google about the topics on impact of technology in nature. They may learn more about the drones. This way, their knowledge can be increased. Now, have a look at this picture for a minute. Do you all like this picture? You can give your answer in the chat box. Can you guess where is it? Why there are coconut trees at the background? Can it be in India? Very good, you go ahead. Yes. If you ask me, I don't know where it is. This was a WhatsApp share. I'm not sure whether it is in Kerala or somewhere. Someone shared it with me on WhatsApp. Okay, let us go to the activity. I'm removing the picture from the screen. Hope you can retain it in your head. Right. Now, if you are using this picture in a primary or a middle level class in a school, what kind of questions you can ask?
Sir, sorry to
You
disturb.
can ask
We cannot see PPT.
PPT, you can't see?
Yes.
Yeah, someone started presenting in between.
It's a request to every participant to do this, please.
You're able to see that now?
No, sir. Only we can see.
Okay. Yeah, someone interfered with that. Someone clicked the presentation button and you're able to see that now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Please don't interfere with the presentation. So we can use some basic questions, very simple questions. Do you like this picture? You can write down these questions on the board since they are primary or middle level students. If it is a smart classroom, you know what to do. You can ask, is it funny or serious? And I saw in the chat box, some people were writing it is a egoistic head. It is blotted up. That is right. But for a primary student, he or she may not know what is ego or why this head is blotted up. But a student can say whether it is funny or serious. What do you think? Is it funny or serious? Funny. Okay. Anyone who think that it is serious? It is presenting a very serious issue. Okay. And satiric also. Very good. Okay. So it is funny or serious. Why do you think it is funny or serious? Next question. You are, slowly increasing the level of difficulty. The next one is, do you understand what is portrayed in the picture? If students don't understand, you can do a little bit of scaffolding and give them clues to understand that, provide needed vocabulary help, or you can use 1 or 2 sentences, or ask other students to explain in the class. So our purpose is to generate more communication from the students. So there will be a few students who can guess what it is and think out of the box and give an answer. What do you see on the cart? Why do you think this culture is displayed? The last 2 questions, why do you think the head is so big and bulky, are a little bit higher level, but at the same time, it is to show that they can run their imagination and answer these questions. Because in the picture, it is not shown where it is displayed. As you all responded, someone said it is Kerala, someone said it is America. We may accept any answer given by the student because it is to create a kind of imaginative pattern in the student where they use their imagination to answer. We need not bother about the authenticity of that answer. Why do you think the head is so big and bulky? Maybe a student give an answer like, maybe this man fell out of the balcony. His head became so big, bloated because of the impact, and he is carrying himself to the hospital. You can't say that whether it is correct or wrong, but we have to look at the way the communication is developing in the class. Now, if the same picture is used in a basic level students, beginners, those who come to learn English as beginners, age doesn't matter. You can use this particular model, TT, TS, SS, and ST. I'll tell you what is TT. The teacher asking the question and teacher answering the question. The teacher asking the question, a student replying to that answer. Then the next step is to make a student ask the question to another student, that student responds. This can be done in the whole class. Finally, when it comes to the last student can ask the same question to the teacher, and the teacher can give the answer. Now, do you like this picture? The question is asked by the teacher. The teacher says, yes, I like this picture. Then the teacher asks the first student in the class, do you like this picture? Then the teacher prompts a student to ask that question to another student. He gets the same answer. Then again, it is coming back to the teacher from the student. This way, each one in the class, including the teacher, gets an equal share of time and equal share of exercising a language and learn this pattern of questioning and answering. Thereby, they can develop basic communication abilities through this kind of exercise. This is only for very basic, those who are learning the language for the first time. Now, if you are using teaching in a secondary level, questions that promote higher order thinking skills. Students are mature, secondary and higher secondary, where you can design questions, their abilities, their knowledge level, and depending on their communicative competence. Why do you think the man's head is made so bulky? You see the progression of questions. The last question I have used in the middle school, I am using as the first question on this level. What do you think the sculpture is trying to communicate through this? The sculpture, what is he trying to tell us? Does the bulk of the head mean the real size of the head or the heaviness of thoughts inside the head? This is a higher order thinking skill. If you think a little deeper, then only you can answer this question. How do you think the man feels carrying a massive head? Now, what do you think? Is it an easy question to answer or difficult? Giving a reason. Can you all see the slides? Okay, thank you. Yeah, do you think this question is difficult or easy? Okay, question number 4. How do you think the man feels carrying a massive head?
It's an opinion-based question.
Yeah, it's opinion based.
Everybody
Does
has.
emotion in it? Yeah, is it an emotion based question?
Yes.
It is, yeah, it is important to use emotions also to learn a language.
I think he's tired, sir. I think he's tired. He's tired with
Yeah, okay,
life,
whatever. Yeah.
day-to-day life.
So you can get different answers from students. You can accept all the answers. And if the answers are not sufficient enough to show the higher order thinking abilities, you can always interfere and give some suggestions. Ask them, why do you get headaches? When do you get headache? Have you ever experienced clouded thinking? Too many things coming to your mind at a time. These are the ways we can generate communication in the class. That's the last question. Have you ever had such a massive head? When you think about problems. Shall I move on to the next slide? Next level.
Yes, sir.
Question that promote critical thinking. This is for college or university level students, because the basic idea is that a college student, graduate should be able to apply critical thinking and make decisions in his life, either it is in professional or personal life. This is very much expected from a graduate. So if we are using the same picture in a degree class, you have to design questions that suit their understanding and their standard of language. How do you relate this sculpture to man's life in the modern world? Why do you think is responsible? Sorry, who do you think is responsible for making the head so massive and heavy? So is it society or is it the person? Like I have given some clues now. Is it the society? Is it the person? Is it personal problems? So you can add to the question. Therefore, you can generate more thinking among students. Is there any connection between a man's thoughts and his life? You can type your responses to the questions. Have you ever experienced such heaviness in your head any time? Then the last question is a very analytical question. You need to think a lot. Is it important to minimize or control our thinking to live a lighter, happier life? Is it necessary to minimize, or you have to control your thinking in order to live a happy life? So last question also involves a decision making, where a student is taught to think critically and make his own decisions. As a teacher, we cannot influence their decision. Only we can give them chance to analyze the situation and come to their own conclusions. whatever, maybe religion, maybe personal problem, maybe their job stress. So in 80s, 90s, we never heard about the word stress. Now you everywhere, you hear that word stress, stress management, how to avoid stress, how to manage your stress. Of course, yes, partly personal, partly social. Now look at the chat box, how much language activity is generated using one simple picture. Hope you all will agree with me that communication can be enhanced using such materials in class. Shall I go to the next slide? I'm going to give you a small exercise. This is an Instagram picture. I have a very good Instagram page called I Love Siliguri. I'm one of the great admirers of that particular page. They sometimes post very interesting pictures. Now try to write a few questions that can be used at the basic or primary level. You just imagine that you are a primary level teacher or a basic level teacher, and write some questions that can be used in your class to generate communication. You can take 2-3 minutes if time is available. Yeah, count the number of children. Observation. Can you ask some decision-making questions based on this picture? Yeah, beautiful question. Would you like to wear such a dress to your school? It's a decision-making question, isn't it? So right from small classes, we can give questions and encourage our students to make their own decisions. If they say yes, why yes? If no, why no? How many boys are there? Wow. Okay, if the same picture you are going to use in a college, what kind of questions will you ask them to? You want to use higher order thinking skills or critical thinking? Please look at the phrase there, Patanjali school. It's a satire, isn't it? Now leave the children. See the picture as a whole. What is the message? So in India, Patanjali products came to the market saying that they are natural products with a call to go back to the natural way of living. Very good question. Is it necessary to go back to the ancient civilization? Excellent question. Yeah, that's a higher order thinking question, critical thinking question. More than that, is it possible to go back after all these years of development? Is it possible to go back to natural way of living? Stone Ages. Can someone answer this question? So do you agree with me now? These materials can be used in a class to create excellent communication among students. Okay, now look at this picture. I would like to discuss the kind of activities you can design using this single picture at various levels of education. At a basic level, you can ask the students to write. So far we have been discussing communication in the class, mostly enhancing their speaking abilities using these pictures. We can also use this picture to teach them academic writing, giving them practice in writing. At a basic middle level, you can ask the students to write a descriptive paragraph using descriptive words. Simply present the picture and ask them to run their imagination and write a paragraph. Also, you can teach them paragraph rules. Then you can teach them a causes and effects essay if you want, if you are teaching that infrastructure in a class. What are the causes? What are the effects of technology? Just deviating, give this as a kind of brainstorming material. Generate more information about nature, technology, whether nature is interfering with technology. What will be the causes and effects of excess use of technology? And advantages and disadvantages of technology. Can teach them to write. And also you can ask them to write an essay on impact of using technology, impact of technology on nature. If you are teaching IELTS, you can train your students using this picture to write an agree-disagree essay or an opinion essay, because we need to teach argumentative essays. You can develop topics that generate arguments. You can give a statement and say whether you agree or disagree. Technology is a boon to humankind or human life. Agree or disagree. Some say that technology is important in life. Some say technology is a problem in life. Do you agree or disagree? What is your opinion? At the end, you state your opinion. These are the ways we can use as a picture that you got from WhatsApp to generate a lot of language learning experience in a class. You can integrate all the skills when you are writing down the questions on the board or give a printed worksheet to the students. They are encouraged to read. They listen to your explanation. They ask questions. So all the skills are included. They listen, they speak, they read, and they write. Even you can generate a lot of homework from students. You can ask students to work in collaboration. Give a project based on this. Ask them to work at home, outside the classroom. Come back and present it in the form of a PowerPoint. Or ask them to even make posters collecting similar pictures. And they can come and present this poster in a class where a lot of language is involved. Students get a chance to present their ideas. They become very bold. To conclude, what I feel is that if teachers have enough imagination and patience to work, we can do a lot of work in a class within a given time frame. We can complete our syllabus, at the same time engage our students in very productive learning using authentic materials. Our talk time can be reduced, and you can enhance the communication skills of students, give more time for them to talk. Now it is time for questions. If you have any questions, please type in the chat box. And in any of further questions, if any of you like to give your suggestions or answers, you can do that. Yeah, there is someone who is asking something about motivating the students. One way of creating interest is to bring these kind of pictures. For example, you look at all the pictures I brought. At one look, there are few gaps in the picture which makes them think. And when you ask these questions, they get engaged. When you are engaging them, they don't have any time to waste in the class. They all will participate. So one way of encouraging them is to select very interesting materials. It can be a short story. It can be a small video. It can be a talk show that are relevant to life, that are directly related to life, also to their understanding level. These things need to be considered. Any more questions? Shall I conclude? Okay, hello. This is the first time I am doing such an exercise, giving a seminar on online.
Am I audible?
Yeah, yes. Go ahead.
Professor Justin?
Yes, yes.
There is a question. Yeah, there is a question from Durgesh.
Okay.
And he is asking that as the students are from rural area and English is the third language for them, because first is their regional language, second Hindi, and then English. So are there some hints or suggestions to develop their communication, and what will help them overcome their fear?
Yeah, that I demonstrated that basic level questioning, isn't it? Repetition and reinforcement. This is one method of doing that.
Right.
And the temptation of rural area teachers is to use the local language to explain. If the teachers could avoid that and teach English using only English and following this particular question pattern, reinforcing, repeating, and ask them to repeat after them. This is one way of doing.
Right.
Another way is to show them videos that interest them, even something like Tom and Jerry, or there is a very beautiful video, Noddy. It's an excellent video. It's a kind of tele-serial which has a conversation in it, very simple conversation. So you can choose videos, cartoons.
Right. And in addition to what sir is saying, especially for rural students, it's very important that you create a conducive environment for them where students are told that they will not be judged for their mistakes and they are allowed to make mistakes. Now the onus is completely on the teacher. How do you create that kind of environment in the class? I'm sure the teacher would not judge the students, but then again you have to convince all other students, the peers in the classroom, that we all are together in this. This is a journey that we have to take together, and despite whatever mistakes you make, we are here to support each other. So if this kind of encouragement and confidence is given to the rural speakers, I think this will help in managing the problem of fear. Okay.
Now, one is to remove their fear. That is also important. And one way is not, you don't be a monster in the class. You be with them and you be one among them. That's very important. Yeah.
Okay, one more question is from Hina Rajawat. She wants, the name of the candidate is Hina Rajawat. She has a question to me. She wants to know that student-centric to student-led method. She wants to know more about that. Okay, so we have been talking a lot about student-centric approach, which means that all the activities, classroom teaching has to be done keeping in mind the student and the necessity, the needs of the student. Now, student-led method is somewhat the same. It is just an extension to student-centric. It means that not only the student is in the center, it also means that student is leading the class. The teacher is just facilitating. The teacher takes a back step. The teacher is not leading the class. She takes a back step and she encourages students to lead the class. One very good example of student-led classroom is, as I shared earlier also, eliciting responses. For example, you write, you give a situation to the students, and instead of you telling them the answers, you ask students. So eventually what happens is the class is not led by the teacher. The teacher is just facilitating the class by putting the students in a situation where they will have to respond to the situation. So this is the whole idea of student-led class. I hope I'm able to answer your question.
Yeah, there is. Shall
Okay.
I take over? One or two questions.
One more question for you, sir, from Dinesh Shinde. Okay. Now, Dinesh wants to know that is it possible to make an arrangement of activities in a large classroom?
Yes, definitely. You can split them into groups or pairs. If it is around 30 students, you can give them either pair work or split 5 groups, 6 students, depending on your convenience. If more number of students are there, you can give group work and you can just go around and spend a couple of minutes with each group, giving them suggestions, asking them questions, guiding them, providing some sort of scaffolding so that they complete the activity. So collaborative learning can be established. That is the only way. Also, there are someone who is asking bloomers and enthusiastic. This way you mix all of them, isn't it? You give equal opportunity to all. And those who are enthusiastic, if you have out of 30, 5-6 students are enthusiastic, make them group leaders. Mix them up. Don't allow friends to be in the same class.
And this is where peer learning comes in picture. This is where what I was talking about, student-led classroom. Exactly, this is the scenario when the people who are more enthusiastic or they are more, a notch higher than the other learners, how can they actually encourage other learners to learn from them?
Yeah, and also they get an opportunity to discuss their idea, lead the class. Also, peer learning, they become peer learning becomes less stressful. And you can see some of them, even those who are very silent and timid, they come out and speak. And in course of time, they dominate. If they are discussing a particular topic, if a slow learner or somebody who doesn't speak at all, he gets some idea into his head, he becomes more enthusiastic and he will try to dominate the group and talk to them or discuss the issue there. So therefore, you are providing equal opportunity to all.
Right. So we can have one last question, sir. Right?
Yeah.
There is one question from Josephine Lawrence, who asks that can we also use bilingual approach to understand the students in the beginning?
See, in the beginning, we can use, that's the way I learned English. So from a Tamil medium school, teachers mix both the languages. But if you want to make them really learn that language like a foreign language situation, if it is a second language situation, there is no problem. If you want to create a foreign language situation, it's better to handle the class only in English. Initially, they may not follow you, but in course of time, 4 or 5 classes, they try to follow you, they try to understand you, they try to collaborate. So,
and also to add to what sir is saying, we generally learn any language by listening to the language, not by reading, right, or by writing. So it makes a lot of sense if we take this monolingual approach and use only the target language in the classroom, because maybe the students won't understand in the beginning, but it will make them familiar with the language. It will make them comfortable with the language, right? And also when they keep on listening to the target language, it really helps them acquire the language.
To add to it, if they are listening, what will happen is that it will enhance their speaking abilities. They listen and they repeat the way they learn the mother tongue by listening. But if for higher academic purposes, students need to be encouraged reading also. Reading is very important if they need to write well.
Absolutely. Listening, when the listening is the input, speaking is the output. When the reading is the input, writing is the output, right?
Yes.
So we have a few more questions, but as you all can see, it is almost 3:45. So I think we will stop here, right? And I'm really thankful to all of you for attending this session. And on the behalf of PP Savani University and my entire team, I thank the speaker for the day and all the participants for this wonderful participation. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
I also thank all the participants. Without your cooperation, this would not have happened. Also, I thank the university for hosting this webinar, and many thanks to Dr. Ankita for inviting me and presenting along with me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thanks
you.
a lot. The session is very useful. It also very big.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. It was really helpful.
You are welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.